eagle feathers carry the tune of uh, one of the members of the Wakantanka that lives in the blue that you see in the sky. On a clear day, and you look up and you see blue, that's a member of the Wakantanka. Now, first of all, I should explain something because there's people, I get new listeners to the show all the time, and not everybody knows these Lakota words. So let me explain that. Um, Today, most Native people are Christian influenced. If they're not Christian, I mean, or they're Christian, yeah. I said that backwards. Let me say it again. Today, most Native people are Christian, and if they're not Christian, they're Christian influenced, and that means when they look at spirituality, it's centered around a one God concept, and that God is male. Okay, so they use words like Tungashila Wakantanka and Ate Wakantanka. Tungashila's grandfather, Ate is father, um, and they uh, interpret Wakantanka to mean God, and this is false. Okay, this is totally incorrect. But there's a reason why today most of today's Lakota people think this way, and I will explain that later. Okay, but there is a reason, and it is a false understanding. Okay, it's a false belief. In the ancient Lakota way, before European contact, Wakatanka is an organization. There's many people in this organization. It's not one God, or it's not a Godhead. Okay, it is an organization of many people, and there's more than one organization, and they all have this name, Wakantanka. Yeah, there's different organizations, but they have the same name. The reason why there's different organizations is because each organization works in a different way. Okay, so you have um, uh, several groups with the same name of Wakantanka. Wakan is some people. Well, the Christians define it as sacred. This is incorrect. Okay, Wakan is more than that. It's like um, life, energy, energy of life, something like that. And Tanka is big. Okay, great. So Wakan Tanka, yeah, that's the words together, and it's describing this organization or this both or several organizations. They all have the same name. Again, they just work in different ways. Okay, but they all have the same goal. It's just that they get there in a different way. Okay, that's Wakantanka. That's the original definition. Now, in the first one, and also I should add that since there's more than one, it's not like, well, which one is the best one? Okay, that's linear thinking. This is not the Lakota way of to think. Yeah, of which one is better. Because a lot of in the modern world we think that okay, you have four things in front of you, so right away you decide to put them in a level scale. Yeah, you think okay, which one is the best one? So we'll put that one at the top. Then there's three left. So you look at these three and you say, okay, of these three, which one is the best one? So then you put that one on, under the other one that you put aside. Now you have two left. So you look at these two things, you say, okay, which one is the best one? Then you put, see, you put them all up and down the line, saying that okay, this one's good, that one's better, that one's betterer, and that one's the best. See, that's linear thinking. Everything going in one line and in one direction. That is not our way of thinking. Okay, we do not have this linear way of thinking in the ancient way. But today, most native people do think in a linear way. So they're not really thinking the ancestral way. Even when they're doing the ceremonies, they're doing it in a linear way. For example, in the sweat lodge ceremony, which properly should be called inipi, sometimes people come in and they'll say, "Get it as hot as possible. I want to really suffer." Because they believe that the hotter it is, the more they suffer, that the more cleansed they are, and that the more, or I should say, that the better they are after the ceremony is over. See, that's linear thinking. It sounds Catholic, yeah. Torture yourself to be um, purified. That's not the Lakota way, yeah. Because every day you're different. Some days you feel strong, some days you feel okay, some days you feel a little bit weak. You fluctuate every day. So it changes every day. It doesn't go in one direction. Yeah. A lot of native people, they'll say, okay, this month I'm gonna do sweat lodge ceremony every day, and it's gonna be at this, get at this certain heat. And then the following month I'm gonna make it hotter. And then the following month, I'm going to make it even hotter. See, they're going up hotter, 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 hot, more hot, more hot, more hot. Yeah. And this is linear thinking. And this, you're going to kill yourself if you do that eventually. Yeah. You're going to really do something bad to yourself. That's linear thinking. This is not our way. Okay. Some days you can make it really hot because you're strong. But some days you don't feel that strong, so you shouldn't get it too hot. You see what I mean? You can fluctuate. There's nothing wrong with that. You do it according to the way you feel on that day. And that's going to change every day. Yeah, that's non-linear. So, unfortunately, most native people today are linear thinkers. And again, I'm going to explain the reason why. Okay, but a little bit later. Okay, so in this Wakantanka, these different Wakantanka groups, neither one is more important than the other. Yeah, neither one is better than the other. They're just different, and that's what we should learn from that. That when we see different groups of people, it doesn't mean one is better than the other. They're just different, but that doesn't mean anybody's better than the other. Yeah, it just means they're different. There's nothing wrong with that. We all can love. We're all capable of that. We're all capable of coming together and in most cases, to mate and have children and have families and so forth. We're all capable of that because of what's inside of us is the same. Yeah, we all bleed red. And this is why red is a sacred color. It's not because red represents Indians. So when I see things on the internet like red people, red power, red earth, I don't like to see that because that is not the ancient way. In the ancient way, native people are called Ikche Oyate. Then it extends to human. But we never called ourselves red. In the Lakota Star Knowledge stories, it never says that. So when you hear the words Chankuluta, the red road, this is not the Indian way. Okay? Because red does not represent Indians. Red represents life. So when you look at the four colors of the medicine wheel, a lot of people think this represents the races of people, and that's baloney. The only red people I really have seen are people who are sunburned, and that's usually white people. Yeah, when when they sunburn, they're really red. Yeah, they're more red than sunburned Indians. Yeah, and and the only yellow people I have ever seen are people who have hepatitis. Yeah, or some kind of disease um, concerning what is it, the liver? Is that it, the liver? Sometimes I think I say kidney, and I think that's a mistake. I think it's supposed to be the liver. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But it's there somewhere. One of those two, or maybe it's both. I don't know. But when people have diseases, their skin turns yellow. Or babies who they're newborns and they get jaundice. I always wondered, why do they call that jaundice? And then I'm learning French. Yeah, I'm learning to speak French because I'm going to live in France pretty soon. And in France, the color for yellow is jaune. And, that's why they call it jaundice when babies turn yellow. Yeah, and it's a temporary condition. It's easily remedied. Anyway, and the Simpsons are the other yellow people, but really, I've never really seen yellow skinned people. And I live in a world city, yeah. And when I first came here, um, uh, I went to take German language classes, and in my classes there were people from China, Japan, I shouldn't say China, Taiwan, yeah, Taiwan, Japan, and Taiwanese people are Chinese, okay, and yeah, there were some Japanese ladies and lady from South Korea, and none of these ladies were yellow, not at all. In fact, they were more like different shades of brown, yeah, but they were not yellow. Yeah, good friend from South Korea, Sook, is a nice lady. I remember that. Wow, 13 years ago. Nice lady. Her husband was a diplomat, South Korea. Anyway, um, getting back to this colors of the medicine wheel, they don't represent skin colors. They represent the directions. Okay, and south um, is red because the Lakota Star Knowledge stories say that after you die, your soul journeys in the south by southwest direction in the stars from the earth. Yeah, when you're on the earth and looking up, you look in a south by southwest direction. There's a path there. Yeah, and it's Changuakan. This is a sacred road, and this is your soul journeys through that area, and it's a south by southwest direction. And this is since it's red represents life. See, there even after our physical bodies are over, we're still not dead. We still continue in another way. Yeah, so it's still life. So that's why south is represented by red. And even when you're still living on this earth, when you're doing your best to live a good life, honoring yourself and on so that you can honor others, so you can think in a community way of thinking, When you live like that, without judging others and and knowing when to say no, because generosity includes knowing when to say no. If you say yes all the time, that's not generosity, that's codependency, and that's an emotional illness. Okay? So when you can live in a really healthy way, especially emotionally, this Kota star knowledge says your soul is always facing south. Yeah? So people think, well, what does that mean then? So the face of my soul is always facing south? Who said the soul has a face? Who said that? See, the ancient view of the soul is not the same as the Christian view. The Christian view of the soul is, oh, the soul looks just like you. Yeah? But that's not the ancient Lakota way. The ancient Lakota way, the soul does not have a face. Doesn't even have a shape like a human. It's something different. Okay? And it doesn't have a voice because you need a voice box to make a sound. That's physical. Yeah? So it cannot do that on its own. So a soul cannot talk. You see what I mean? This is from the ancient Lakota star knowledge. So it's when it says it's all when you're living a good life and that your soul is always facing south. Now you can it makes more sense that if it doesn't have a face, if it doesn't have arms and legs, but it's something different, it's easier to understand. It's easier to comprehend that it's whatever this is, it's always facing the south when you are living a healthy life, honoring others as you honor yourself. Yeah, communicating in a healthy way, and that means listening too. It's not just what you say and what you do; it's how you interpret what you see and what you feel, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste. It's how you interpret that. That's also communication. So how you listen. How good do you listen? Because a lot of us don't do that, and we're not good. We can hear, but we don't really listen. We have to learn how to do that. So all of this is living a healthy life. And when you do this, your soul is facing the south because that's the road of life. It's not the Indian road, it's the road of life. That's why south is represented by the color red. Okay? So just throw that in there. Anyway, back to this Wakantanka thing I was saying here. That in the ancient view, there's like I'll say it again. There's more than one, and each one of them are organizations. Okay, and in the first one, when I say the first one, it was the first one that was created. Okay, that's why I say it's the first one. It doesn't mean it's the best one. It just was the first one that was created. One of the people in that group is called Shkun. That's what you see in the sky, the blue. Yeah, that is what you see. So when you come close to that area, it's sacred. You're in a sacred area, very sacred. And eagles fly the highest. Yeah, this is why their feathers are considered sacred because that energy from that blue that you see in the sky, the energy from this shkung goes into the feathers. That's why they're sacred. That's why they need to be handled in this very certain way. Yeah. But I remember in one of the discussions that I had before the break, and I was talking about how in the Pow-wow world, you see a lot of people wearing eagle feathers. And to me, it's sad, yeah, because of the Lakota Star Knowledge perspective that I live by. But most people don't know that perspective. So when they see this, they think, oh, that's cool. Eee, that looks nice. Wow. Yeah. Look at all the feathers and the pretty colors and all the dancers and the regalia and all of this stuff. Oh, isn't that just neat? And for one thing, the powwow world is not traditional. Okay, it is not traditional. Powwows they never existed. Not until uh, just before the reservation system started in the late 1800s. It started with the Omaha native people, and they lived somewhere around Nebraska, Iowa area. Yeah, and their language is kind of related to ours. There are some interesting things there. Yeah. Um, so these this group of native people, they started this new dance, and it became it became known as the Omaha dance. Yeah, and it was a social thing. It's not a ceremony. Okay, it's not a ceremony. It's a social thing. But people danced to make the people feel good because at that time is a very sad time for Native people all over Northern America, North America. Okay, because they're being herded onto reservations in America and reserves in Canada. It's the same thing. It's just a different word. And very sad time. Governments, organizations, and military mistreating the native people at every turn. It was very sad. A lot of hardships happened. A lot of people died because of depression and things like that. And so the Omahas, they came up with this dance to make the people feel good. So when they dance in such a way to make the people feel good, they're not dancing for themselves. They're dancing so that the people may live. Yeah? This is a native concept that exists in many tribes. Yeah? In Lakota, they say, Onipi kta chale chamuelo. I'm doing this so that the people may live. You do it for the people. Let me say that again. You do it for the people. That was the original thought behind this Omaha dance. Then in Lakota country, they started another dance called the rabbit dance. I will tell that story later. Okay, it's a very pretty story. But this happens at the beginning of the reservation time period too. It's very sad time. And again, in the Lakota way, rabbits have a medicine to make you feel good. When you eat their meat, you feel good. Yeah. So they really play a huge role in how we got this dance. They brought this dance to us. And I will tell that story a little bit later tonight. Okay? A little bit later. I want to continue with this thought here. So they do it for the people so that the people may live, to be strong, to be healthy, to support one another, to help one another, to learn from one another, to love one another. But it begins by you doing something for the people, not for yourself. Okay? And that's the original way. So when they did this, sometimes they would challenge each other. So they would have contests. And it was just to challenge each other, but it was a healthy competition because that meant the dancers had to be more creative. Yeah, they had to come out with more creative dance moves, but not to show off, but to to make the people feel good. So the people are watching the dancers and going, "Wow, that guy is really good. Well, that lady is. Wow, look at the moves she's doing. Look at what those guys are doing. Wow, wow." You're at the at the. It wasn't the. They didn't call it a powwow yet. Yeah, you're at this social event and you're going, "Oh, this is amazing." And then the songs really sound good. The songs they have words like Lakota choha gilila otehi ke kash lana lila tewahi la yelo. The Lakota ways are it's difficult, but I love them. It's good to be Lakota. See, they're trying to make the people feel good because we were facing shit all around. Yeah, the United States government, the state governments, and things like that. We were falling apart and we were beginning to turn against each other, especially when our tribal chief system was eliminated by Washington, D.C., and we were forced to accept a new government that's based on Washington, D.C. government. And we still, all tribes in America still are under that same oppressive government. And this is the reason why every tribe is divided against itself. Yeah, this we can't. The people in one tribe can't even unite because of this government. It's not traditional at all. So when you see on the news leader of the Shannon River Sioux tribe or leader of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, stuff like that, these are not traditional governments. These are governments that don't work. Yeah, they just tear apart the people even more. Okay, so um, anyway, so these songs, back in the late 1800s, they were meant to try to make the people feel good so they can be strong as we go through this shitty time. It's basically the shitty time starts with the massacre of Wounded Knee in 1890. Basically, that's when it starts. So, and then, our language was made illegal, our ceremonies were made illegal, our spiritual people were thrown in a mental hospital. So we had nowhere to go for spiritual help except for to the churches as they came on the reservations. And so we slowly started to become Christian. We started to become patriarchal. And we started to lose that way of thinking of our ancestors. I'll explain this more later, okay? So, as we started thinking this way, we became more selfish. And so, when we started to do our dances, our social dances, we no longer did it for the people. We were starting to do it for ourselves. And that's how it is in the powwow world today. This is why I'm not that crazy about powwows, especially the huge ones, like Gathering of Nations, the absolute worst powwow I've ever been to in my life. That powwow is nothing but vanity, yeah. And there's a lot of alcohol and drugs going on there, yeah. Because in the traditional world, they're not supposed to have that at a powwow. And people are competing for big money, hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars. When some of these rich casinos have their powwows, their prizes are in the thousands of dollars. So then you have dancers that are competing for that, and they're extremely jealous of one another. But when they face each other, they act like they're best friends. Yeah? Behind their each other's backs, they're wishing the other one would die, basically. This is not the spirit that this was created for. Remember what I said? In the late 1800s, the Omahas, when they created their dance, it was for the people, so that the people may live. But today, it's not like that. Today, they do it, the dancers dance for themselves, so they can win the money for themselves. And the thinking is really linear. It's what I explained. Yeah, that linear thinking, you only go in one direction, and you think that the further you go, the better you are. And that's really not true, because nature is not that way. Nature is cyclical. The ancient Lakota way is that way too. This is why we're not linear. So in the powwow world, a lot of times people, you know, they say, you know, they have an Indian name, and they they think that this makes them better. And the truth is, this never existed before. And in the ancient way, we didn't have this thinking. When you were born, you received a name, yeah, from your parents or grandma or grandpa or somebody. Yeah, so you had a name, but as you're coming to enter puberty, then we have our coming of age ceremonies. And part of that ceremony, you get your adult name. So your name that you had as a child, that they don't use that anymore. Now you have your own adult name, and this will be your name for the rest of your life. Okay? Now sometimes you received it in a vision, okay? Sometimes an elder from your family really thinks highly of you because you remind him or her of themselves. They have a special connection with you. So they might give you their name at the ceremony. And then they take your name. They take your child name. That happens too. But you only have one name. That's all you need. Yeah? That's all you need. And the thing is, in the ancient way, we never called each other by our name. We never said, "Hey, Sitting Bull." "Oh, hi, Crazy Horse." They didn't talk like that. Sitting Bull was the generation of Crazy Horse's parents. So instead of, he wouldn't call, a Crazy Horse would not address Sitting Bull as Sitting Bull. He would address him as uncle. So he called him Lekshi. He didn't say Sitting Bull. He said Lekshi. That means uncle. So you don't even use your name. So why do you have a name then? Well, it's a ceremonial thing. But during normal everyday life, people call you according to the way they're related to you. So you're somebody's cousin, so they'll call you cousin. You're somebody's brother, so they will call you brother. You're somebody's son, so they will call you son. Do you see what I mean? Or daughter. So they always call you by how they're related to you. They never called you by your name. That's reserved for ceremony. That's the ancient way. I've seen this happen all the way to my mother's generation. When she sees her cousin, my Auntie Lila, my Auntie Lila Hale, they would say, "Oh, Chaposhi, Nila Taong, Chionke." Cousin, it's really good to see you. Like that. Chaposhi is another way to say that. Female cousin for women. That's a woman's word. A man would call his female cousin Hankashi. It's another word. There's other terms too, but I'll just say this. I don't want to confuse you with all these Lakota words. But what I'm saying is they call each other by how they are related to each other. They didn't say names. Yeah, they didn't say that. That's the old way. I like that way. Because when you call somebody by how you're related to them, it puts you in a certain mindset. Yeah, and so you want to help each other. You want to learn from one another. You want to work as a team when you call each other by a relative name. That's why it worked. That's why our family systems were so strong before the reservation time period. Now we're not this way anymore. Now their families are constantly infighting and things like that because nobody calls each other by how they're related. It's just us older people do that. Yeah, it's a lost custom. It makes me feel sad. Nobody talks like that anymore. So anyway, that's the original way. Okay. So in today's powwow world, it's very opposite thinking of our ancient way. And the powwow world is very linear thinking. That they gotta be better than the other one. They dance for themselves. They don't dance for the people. They're dancing to win the money. They're not dancing to make the people feel good. That's it's a to me when I go to a powwow, a big powwow, these big contest powwows, I don't feel good at all. As I can feel the jealousy in the air that the dancers have against each other, and it's just to me it's sickening, and so I just prefer the small community powwows because those are still more traditional thinking where people go to dance to make the people feel good. They're not going there to win money. Yeah, that's the original way of thinking, and that's why I like the small powwows. And they eat better. You go to these big fancy schmancy gathering of nations powwow, shit, man, you better have money because that's the only way you're going to eat. Yeah, but these little tiny community powwows on the res, everybody is fed, and it doesn't cost money. Everybody is fed, and you're gonna eat buffalo meat. Everybody's gonna get buffalo meat. Not cool? I like that. That's a good thing. So that's why I honestly prefer the smaller powwows. So yeah, on Cheyenne River, that was um, um, what's that place called? On the east end, they had a nice small one there in La Plante. Um, I can't even remember the name. I've been gone so long. Swift something, and I can't even think of the second word. Oh my gosh, where am I? I'm losing it. Another really nice one was the one where I come from, Dupree. Yeah, another nice one. And the West End, um, uh, the one in Bridger, what's that called? Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting everything? So I'm learning my fourth language now, and which is French, and I'm really focusing in on that. And that when I do that, I forget English things. Yeah, Takini. Jeez, that was just on the tip of my tongue, and I couldn't even think of it. Takini really has a good powwow in September. Yeah, the second weekend of September. Well, they used to have it, and second weekend. I don't know when they have it now, but it was a really nice powwow. Cherry Creek, also another good one. Red Scaffold, um, good powwows. I think Whitehorse on the west end, another one too. Um, nice, nice powwows, yeah. Community powwows. Sometimes they're contest powwows too, but they still have that community thinking. It's I like that. Yeah, it's really nice. Beautiful nature around the area too. So anyway, um, I saw. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna say any names, but I saw. Um, Let me tell you a story. It is better. It can better explain what I mean. Okay. In my young years, and in my 20s, um, I knew somebody who was a good powwow dancer. I'm not. I'm gonna try and not say the gender. Okay. This person was really good, and this person wanted to get an Indian name, and why don't I just say he? Okay, I'll just say he, but I'm not going to tell you if it's a boy or a girl. Okay, I will say he. All right. So he asked one of my aunts to give him an Indian name, and he chose his own Indian name and told my aunt, give me this Indian name and I give you $100. And so they did a small private ceremony where my aunt tied an eagle feather on this guy's hair and gave him the Indian name that the guy chose. And when I heard that, I thought that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Because you don't choose your own name. No, 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 no. What happens is that, see, this whole Indian name business, this started after the reservation time started. Okay? Um, because remember when I said that when the reservation started, our ceremonies were against the law. So these coming of age ceremonies didn't happen anymore. Yeah, so they had to do something different. So that's where this comes from. But you do not choose your own name. Somebody, you choose somebody wise to give you a name, but that person has to spend time with you. Yeah, so they find out what kind of person are you. They need to learn your personality, and from that they will give you your name. So you don't choose your name, they choose it based on how they, the information they get by observing you and talking to you, how you are supposed to get it, the name. Okay? So when this guy, he told my aunt, I want this name, I'll give you $200 and we can do a small ceremony with the medicine man or just the old person and say, okay, this is going to be my name, tie the feather to my hair, and now I have that Indian name. So this guy chose his own name, and that, my friends, is vanity. That violates one of our virtues called wahwala, which is humility. Okay? All right. So I asked my aunt, why did she do that? And she said, well, I needed the money, she said. And so I said, okay. And that's your decision, but I think it's still wrong. I said that this guy chose his own name. And she said, yeah, I know, but that powwow world is not real, she said. Yeah, my aunt said that powwow world is a bad world. The people are just jealous of each other. And so I know that this person is selfish, and she said maybe it was a bad thing that I did. She said, but I needed the money. She said. So I'm not gonna judge her. Okay, I'm not gonna judge her. That's a decision she has to live with. Um, so I just let it go. Okay. Well, about 2 years had gone by, and the same guy wanted a second Indian name, and I thought, oh my God, this is getting ridiculous. So he asked my aunt again, and already he chose his own second name. So he said to my aunt, I give you $100 if you give me this name. And my aunt said, no, I can't do that. So the guy got mad. Well, I'll find somebody else, he said. She said, go ahead. You go. She said, this is not our way. She said, there's no such thing as having two names. That that's not our tradition because that violates wahwala. That violates our law of humility. She said, I'm not going to be a part of that. I don't need that money like that, she said. I might as well sell drugs if I'm going to do that, she said. So he really got mad and he left. Excuse me. You see what I'm getting at? So that guy today has two Indian names. And us older people, when we see this, and we say that shows you that this is a selfish man. That's Iktomi. That's how Iktomi is. Iktomi is very vain. Iktomi is the character in our stories that teaches us how not to do things. So Iktomi, in a lot of our stories, Iktomi can transform himself into a really good-looking guy, but all he focuses is on his outward appearance. He doesn't focus on, you know, inner beauty. He's really selfish, and he ends up doing really foolish things because of his selfishness. That's what this guy was like. It's like Iktomi. Yeah. So my aunt told this guy when he was going out the door, she told him, "You're like Iktomi, but you're worse." She said because Iktomi only has one name. She really told him off. But that's the powwow mentality. Traditional. Huh? So years went by, and this guy got married and had some kids, and here, you know, now his kids grew up and had kids too. So now this guy is a grandpa. Yeah, he's a grandpa now, but he still thinks this way. He's still linear, selfish thinking guy, and he gave his he had his grandson receive three names. He's passing this uh, selfish way of thinking onto his grandson, and that I to me is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I have heard a lot of ridiculous things, but this to me is just outright selfishness. This is not the way of our people. Why do you need three names? See, this linear thinking that the more you have, the better you are. That's selfishness. That's vanity. That's not wa'unshila. That's compassion. That's not wahwala, which is humility. It's not generosity. It's not respect. And it's not wisdom. It violates all seven Lakota virtues, this way of thinking. This is not the Lakota way, but that's the powwow mentality. So, you non native people, when you travel to a reservation, you want to see a powwow, I want you to know that that's not traditional, that's modern. It's not even well, it's maybe a little more than 100 years old, but that is not traditional. That's not a ceremony. It's a very selfish event. Unless it's a small powwow. Those are the really nice ones because those have the traditional thinking there. Yeah, but I'm talking about the big ones: Denver, Red Earth, and Oklahoma, and Gathering of Nations, and and Albuquerque, and these casino powwows, the rich casino tribes, and their powwows on the East Coast and the West Coast. Those powwows, they really have a weird energy, and I advise not to go to those because it's not our way. That's the powwow culture. German way of saying culture. But that's not our way. Absolutely not. Yeah. So the powwow mentality violates humility, compassion, generosity, wisdom, respect, prayer, and what's the other one? I forget the other one. But it violates all seven. Yeah. So, um, this is what I was saying. That this family is like that. Yeah? They think in a linear way. They think that the more Indian names they have, the better they are. This is that. This is selfishness. This is not the Lakota way. And in the traditional way, you did this when you went through puberty. And in the powwow world, they're doing this any old time they feel like it. They're not even following tradition whatsoever. In fact, they're violating tradition. The modern powwow culture violates the ancient spirituality. This is why I'm not a powwow person. Yeah. I just thought I'd share that with you because a lot of people don't know. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that in this world. They think that is everybody is traditional, and it's not true. Yeah, the powwow world is not our ancient way, not at all. And powwow people they have their traditions too, but they're really stupid. Yeah, they really it's all made to elevate themselves above other people. That is a form of oppression. On my reservation, in Cheyenne River City Reservation, it used to be a nice powwow in September. Yeah, Labor Day weekend it used to be a really good powwow, and then they started to they wanted to bring in outside drum groups, outside dancers and stuff like that. To the only way to do that was to make big grand prize money. So from their budget, the tribal budget, they used um what was it, like $300,000 or something to put on a powwow, and it's kind of ridiculously high. And they brought in all these outside people, and the people on Cheyenne River felt left out at their own powwow. The singers, the local drum groups, were kind of pushed around, yeah, by their own powwow. Even the local dancers kind of got pushed out at their own powwow because the tribe was catering to outside people. They wanted to make this a huge event. See, that's linear thinking again. Let's get as many Indians in here as possible, and to bring these well-known drum groups and well-known dancers, we gotta offer more money. See, linear thinking, going in one direction. If we do this more, then this means it's better. See, that's linear thinking. That's not our way. So the Cheyenne River Powwow is, for a lot of people, it's become not too good of an experience. And I feel sad about that. That totally violates the original idea. The original idea is Onipi kta chalechamuelo. I do this so that the people may live. I do this for the people so that the people may live. This means no money should be involved. And today's powwow world is the total opposite of that. Absolute opposite of that. That's not a good thing because it's hurting the people. Because jealousy is flowing everywhere now. This is all linear thinking. So the powwow world is a linear thinking world today. And that is not our way because the ancient way is a non-linear system. The ancient way is a community perspective. The powwow way is individualistic, egotistic perspective, selfishness. Ancient way, selflessness. Powwow way, selfishness. Two different things. Oil and water, they don't mix. Yeah? So I just wanted to say that because powwow season's gonna start now. Yeah, and for me, if I was still in South Dakota, I would just be hitting the small ones. I'd just go hit the um, Swift Bird. Jeez, I couldn't even think of that as. Oh gosh, Swift Bird coming up pretty early, I think, and then White Horse, and then other places, and head down to Rosebud at some of the small powwows there, the smaller communities on the Pine Ridge Res, and the smaller communities in Standing Rock and Lower Brule and Cool Creek, and just have fun at the smaller powwows. Yeah, because those are more on the traditional side. Yeah, so I would stay away from the big ones myself. That's just my personal thing, but that's because um, my personal foundation is Lakota Star knowledge. That's the reason why. Back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, there were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave, we were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us, and we're only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that, but once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it, and then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. Yeah. So what we got on the reservation was bullshit food. Yeah, it was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. And these, as I said earlier, these are the four parts of the self. So with the four parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan, they come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now,
Another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota star knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine women, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. Yeah. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so, there was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were star knowledge people. Yeah? They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, they passed it down, to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I have this show, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. Yeah, this is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, as I said in the beginning, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German or a Japanese or an African. You communicate as a human. Yeah, that's really important to know. So that's how it was back then. Yeah. Now remember, I said that the priest said to the Indians, "We will help your children." So they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. Yeah, the pay was really low, so they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter, and they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered, they were killed, they were raped, they were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all of these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through, what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. And remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead. So they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. they missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. Yeah? All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. As a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation.